So welcome to Herriman City's virtual Lunch for Leaders. My name is Tammy Moody. I am an assistant city manager with Herriman City. And I just want to start off by reminding everybody to mute your microphones so that we can reduce some of the background noise that tends to happen during these virtual meetings. I apologize if you end up hearing my dog snoring or some of my kids arguing. I try to keep them from doing that. It doesn't always work, and it always tends to happen during these types of meetings. I also want to remind businesses that if you have questions for the panel, you can go ahead and submit them through the chat box. It's just located right at the top of your screen. So when you click on it, it'll drop down. You can type in your question. I will ask the panel your question, and then you can go ahead and unmute yourself so that you can have dialogue back and forth with them while they're responding. We have also received some questions through email, so I will also be presenting those questions and comments to the panel throughout this web panel chat as well. I think we have all experienced this unique way of conducting business. And unfortunately for some, that has meant that their businesses haven't been able to be open. And for others, it means that we have had to continuously try to find creative ways to provide service to our public and keep business going. We have all heard through the media and all other resources the impacts that COVID-19 is having on public health, as well as on healthcare services, but we realize it's important to understand the significant impact that it is having on our businesses and on our economy. So Herriman City wanted to host this meeting to help connect all of our local businesses with the people and resources that can provide helpful information to guide you through this uncertain situation. Many of you may have heard that yesterday Governor Herbert plans on making the move from a red phase into an orange phase that will go into effect May 1st at 12:01 a.m. Many facilities will be able to open now under this orange phase, but it will require very strict conditions, especially for restaurant industries and personal services such as salons and items like that. Health precautions must be implemented according to the Utah Leads Together 2.0 plan. Herriman City will make sure that there is a copy of that plan placed on our website so that you can have the convenience of viewing it as needed to make sure that you are in compliance with the restrictions that would be placed on your businesses. So though it is good news that some businesses will be able to open, it does not lessen the impact that the last few months have had on our businesses. And that is why I would like to introduce you to our leadership panel today that can help talk you through some of your situations and hopefully provide some information to assist you. So I'm just going to go through and introduce our panel, and they can just give a quick wave, and then I will turn the time over to them so that each of them can give an introduction of themselves and talk briefly about this current situation. So from Herriman City, we have Councilman Clint Smith. We also have Councilman Stephen Shields. From Zions Bank, we have Robert Spendlove, who is their Economic and Public Policy Officer. From EDC Utah, we have Colby Cooley, who is from their Rapid Response Team. From the Southwest Valley Chamber of Commerce, we have Susan Schilling, who's their president. And then all the way from the DC area, we have Pat Jordan with Jordan and Associates. So I will turn the time now over to our panel, and we will start with Councilman Clint Smith.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to participate in this this event this afternoon. As Tammy has mentioned, you know, this is obviously a different time than any of us have experienced in the past, and you know, to be able to come together on this type of format to help collaborate together, to be able to give resources or point people to the resources to help support each other in this time is going to be essential moving forward to help each of the businesses within our community to be successful, whether they've been able to remain open or not. So just a little bit about me. I'm just started my third year now on the council. In my first term on the council, I had the opportunity to serve on the planning commission for nearly 8 years previous to coming onto the city council. I've lived in the city now for 21 years. So my wife and I built our home in Herriman right when Herriman was just deciding that it wanted to become the next hotspot. So we've been able to be out there to watch the entire really growth of the community. There was less than 1,000 people still in Herriman when my wife and I moved in 21 years ago. So we've been there to really see our community grow up, and we've been involved in our community really from the get-go. My wife is a small business owner within the community as well, and has certainly been hit and affected by the current situation. And so, again, I've been able to really kind of see this situation from both sides. That is from the city leadership side and what we can do to help support our businesses, but also from the side of being, with my wife and her small business out there, who has been one of the ones that's been shut down, for the past month, and looking how now we can implement some of these precautions to try and get back open and start providing that service and get back to a leadership, or excuse me, a point to where we can be one of those values in the community again. So appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I don't know that I'm certainly an expert in this, but certainly want you to know that from the leaders, from the city point, certainly supportive of all of the efforts that have been put in place and looking to do additional things that we can do to help stimulate that recovery by our businesses. So thank you again.
Okay, and Councilman Stephen Shields.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks everyone for being on today. This is a really good thing to get all these resources together, get all these business owners together in one place to have this kind of a discussion. I think is a great resource for our city. A tribute to the organization, tribute to our staff and Tammy for putting this together. So thank you for doing that. For those of you who don't know me, I have been elected to the council for 4 months now, just getting my feet wet. So I'll defer all the questions to Clint for the rest of the program. He'll know more than me. I have lived in the Southwest Valley for the past 25 years, all within about 6-7 miles of where I am right now in Herriman. I've just watched it explode, see all the growth and excitement out here. It has been unbelievable. And as part of that growth, we're excited to have all these businesses, large and small, in our community. I've owned 4 businesses in the past. My wife currently owns a small home-based retail business, and I can tell you that I have great sympathy for the difficulties and the pains that everybody's going through right now. Even those that haven't been impacted as much, it's still a struggle. And I want you to know that we recognize and understand that, are sympathetic, and are trying to do what we can to help you out. As far as the resources of the city, we're excited for the things that have been done. I think we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go on. We'll probably talk a little bit about some plans we have going forward that we think might be able to add a little bit to this recovery as well. But we just want to thank you for your time today and look forward to having a great conversation.
Thank you. And now Robert Spenlev with Zions Bank.
Great, thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate you having me. This is a great forum, and I think it's a really helpful way to help get information out. So what I want to do is just kind of give an overview of some of the economic indicators that we're seeing right now, both nationally and a little bit on the state level, and then talk a little bit about some of the resources that we've seen coming down to help address the coronavirus epidemic, specifically the impact to businesses. So there's no sugarcoating it. The data is looking really tough right now. This morning we got, one of the struggles that we've been having is up till now, a lot of the data has been anecdotal. We haven't had a lot of hard economic data coming, but we're starting to see that. And probably the most important one we get is the gross domestic product. And we received that GDP for the first quarter this morning. It came in at a drop of 4.8% in the first quarter. We were estimating that it would be around 3.5%, so it was even worse than we were expecting. Now, what does that mean? That's the lowest GDP reading we've seen since the beginning of the Great Recession. So since the fourth quarter of 2008, and it now signals officially the end of the longest expansion, economic expansion in U.S. history. It also reflects a dramatic slowdown in the U.S. economy. If you think about that, the first quarter is January, February, and March. The slowdowns really only started, and the business shutdowns only started in March. But it was so dramatic that that 1 month of data dragged overall economic growth down by 4.8%. We also saw, if you think about the components of the economy, consumer spending is the most important part of the economy. Consumer spending dropped 10.2% in the first quarter. Interestingly, healthcare spending was about half of the loss in GDP. And the reason for that, even though we've been focusing so much on healthcare, it's all that essential healthcare. The non-essential healthcare has essentially gone to zero, and so we've seen a big drop there. Business spending in the first quarter dropped by 8.6% nationally, and then we've seen imports and exports activity dropping as well. Now, what do we expect for the second quarter that we're in right now? According to the Congressional Budget Office, they expect that we will continue to see contractions. In fact, forecasters are anticipating that 4.8% in the first quarter turns into a 38% drop in GDP. For the second quarter, that would match the worst quarterly contraction since the 1930s. So this really is historic in the impact that we've seen. The CBO expects that for the full year, GDP will contract by about 5.6%. That would be the largest contraction we've seen in many years, for sure, since the Great Depression. To put that in perspective, during the Great Recession in 2009, the annual drop in GDP was right around 3%. So we believe this will be much larger than the Great Recession of 10 years ago. Looking at retail sales fell 8.7% in March. That's the largest contraction since they began collecting this data in 1992. So dramatic increases or impacts to retail sales. Oil prices are now down around $15 a barrel. You may have heard about oil prices dropping negative. Well, that was on the May contract. Essentially, when people purchase oil, they have to do it on a futures contract, and so that May contract actually dropped negative. And for the June contract, we're down around $15 a barrel. Now, the reason for that is it's basic supply and demand. So right now, the demand for oil, because we've seen such a dramatic contraction, the demand for oil has dropped down from about 110 million barrels of oil per day down to about 84 million barrels of oil per day. So we've got too much supply of oil and demand is way down. And so we've seen oil prices drop dramatically. We're also seeing a big drop in gas prices. Now, normally that would be a benefit to the economy, but because it's being driven so much by a loss in supply, a loss in demand. It is not having the typical positive benefit that we would see. And one of the truly strange things that we're seeing, if you've ever heard of OPEC, the oil producing companies, it's a cartel. And generally in America, cartels are illegal. And we always fight the actions of our cartels to work together to set prices. Today, the Texas Oil Commission essentially announced that they will be coordinating with OPEC, and they will be dropping their oil production by 20% until global demand surpasses 85 million barrels a day. So we start to see some of these changes that we would never expect to see in normal economic conditions. Looking at unemployment, continues to rise. Again, we don't have good normal data on unemployment. Usually comes out on a monthly basis, and the data hasn't shown up on our top line unemployment. So what do we do to try to figure out what unemployment really is? We look at those weekly unemployment insurance claims, and we get that on the national level and on the state level on Thursdays. So at the US level, we had 4.4 million new claims for unemployment insurance last week alone. When you add up the last few weeks, we now have about 26 million people who have filed for unemployment insurance claims in the United States. So if you just kind of take the total size of the labor force in the U.S. and divide and make that a ratio of those 26 million people, we can estimate that the unemployment rate is around 19% in the United States right now, and it will continue to rise. Estimates right now is that it could top out around 25% in the United States. That would match the highest unemployment rate we've seen since the Great Depression. The Great Depression topped out at 25% unemployment. We could see a similar number in the current environment. Looking in Utah, we had close to 20,000 new unemployment insurance claims last week alone. To put that in perspective, last year, the state of Utah saw a total of 60,000 unemployment insurance claims for the entire year. And last week alone, we saw almost 20,000. Total number of unemployed in Utah now is about 126,000 people. Again, using that same kind of ratio of unemployed to our workforce, I estimate that our unemployment rate is right around 7.9% in the state of Utah. Before the crisis began in January, the unemployment rate was the lowest ever at 2.5%. We're now at, again, approaching 8%. I think that once we see the full impact of the downturn in Utah, we could expect to see our unemployment rate as high as 14 to 17%. Again, which would be much higher than during the Great Recession, would probably be the highest we've seen since the Great Depression. Another indicator that we're looking at, the Conference Board yesterday released their new estimates of consumer confidence. And we have seen the biggest drop in consumer confidence since the early 1970s. If we look at it, it's kind of on an index level. About a month ago, the index was right around 170. The number for yesterday was 76. So we've seen consumer confidence drop dramatically. Now, a bright spot about, well, let me get into some of the detail before I get to the bright spot. But specifically, they say, do you plan on going on a vacation or buying a car in the near future? Before the crisis began, it was about 65% of people said yes. It's now at about 33%. What about their expectations? So that's a brighter spot. The question is, do you expect conditions to pick up in the next year in terms of there being more jobs than there are now? So before the crisis hit, it was about 15%, and that's now jumped up to about 42%. So while consumers are very nervous about the current state of the economy. They do have confidence that we will recover, and that's the kind of the big question is how quickly. And what I'm watching really closely is to see when do we hit the bottom of the trough, and when do we start to recover, and when do we start to see those signs of a recovery. I'm hoping with some of the changes we're seeing this week, with reopening businesses and reopening a lot of parts of the economy, even though we have to be very cautious as we start to reopen that, I'm hoping that we'll start to see that the bottom of that trough and start to see a recovery on the way. So talking specifically about some of the resources, and the bottom line here is an unprecedented impact that we've seen demands an unprecedented response, and we really have seen that. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the PPP loans, which is part of the overall $2.2 trillion CARES Act. But the CARES Act is the largest stimulus bill we've ever seen in our country. The next closest was about $800 billion during the Great Recession. The PPP loan received $350 billion during the first round of funding, and as you know, that funding was exhausted in a matter of days. And so Congress came back and funded another $320 billion in the second round. That program opened up just this week on Monday, and already we've seen high levels of interest. As of yesterday, the Small Business Administration has processed 475,000 loans worth about $52 billion. So we're seeing high interest in this. My one fear is that there's such high interest that we will fully exhaust the next round of $320 billion in the next few days as well. And hopefully we'll see Congress coming back for a phase 4 of stimulus to provide more money to businesses. The other side, so that's what we call fiscal policy or actions from Congress. On the other side is monetary policy, which is the Federal Reserve. In fact, right now, the Federal Reserve is wrapping up its regular meeting, and we'll be holding a press conference this afternoon to talk about some of the actions they're taking. But some of the actions they've already taken are already announced. Number one, the Fed has cut their interest rate to 0 and just committed that it will stay there as long as the economy is struggling. They've also increased bond buying. So they've been buying a lot of assets around the country. They're buying municipal debt. They're also lending directly to both large and mid-sized companies. They haven't done that. They haven't done direct lending since the Great Depression. Just looking at some of the impact of these major programs. We talked about the PPP program. That's focused on really small businesses under 500 employees. But now the Fed is taking an active role in the next step, which is what they call the Main Street Loan Program. And that program hasn't started yet, but the goal of that is to reach to those middle to larger companies. They've committed $600 billion to funding the Main Street Loan Program. And then for larger businesses, the Fed is purchasing corporate credit, putting $750 billion towards corporate credit. They're also buying asset-backed securities to the tune of about $100 billion. And then they're buying municipal bonds to the tune of about $500 billion. When you take all these together, these actions are more aggressive than the Fed's response to the Great Recession. And the result of this is the Fed's balance sheet. So essentially the value of everything that the Fed has bought has increased from $4.2 trillion to $6.6 trillion. It's a dramatic increase in the Fed's holdings. To put that in perspective, before the Great Recession, the Fed's balance sheet was about $800 billion. They have pledged to do whatever it takes to support the economy, and I really believe that that we have the resources to be able to address this. You may have seen the stock market is actually up quite a bit today. You wouldn't expect that with such bad economic data, but when we see the responses from the Fed, from Congress, and from also state and local government, while this is tough, they remain committed to make sure that we have the resources to recover. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Colby Cooley.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. I appreciate it. To give a little bit of background on me personally, I am part of the team over at the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. I think initially the ask went out to our CEO, Teresa Foxley, to be on this panel. Unfortunately, she had a conflict with some partners of ours in northern Utah that was already planned. So I will do my best to fill in her place. At EDC Utah, I run our proactive outreach program. So the program that we maintain to try to keep the pipeline full of companies that are considering Utah. And that will be ultimately important here going forward, we think. So I'm looking forward to being part of that effort. Also, you can see there on the panel there that I am part of the Rapid Response Team, which is a group of volunteers that was put together actually by the World Trade Center of Utah to help out with small businesses that are applying for the PPP loans that Representative Spendla was just speaking to. So it's been truly pretty phenomenal. We've got about 6 teams of about 6 to 7 people each that for the last few weeks has been fielding questions, trouble calls, concerns from small business owners in Utah that are trying to apply for these PPP loans and helping them work through them on a one-on-one basis. So despite the bad news and despite the reason why we're doing it, it's been really cool to see this group of volunteers come together and help out small businesses in our communities. I know a good amount about the PPP program and the EIDL loans that, again, Representative Spendla was just speaking to. Today, though, I'm going to go over a little bit high level on the Utah Leads Together plan. So to launch right into it, version 1 of that was released a handful of weeks ago. And more importantly, version 2 was released about a week and a half ago. Essentially, the point of version 2 was to offer a coordinated statewide plan to address both the health crisis that's going on and then the economic crisis as well, and to provide really two tracking systems for us and the state to pay attention to as we weather this crisis. So on the economic front, so on the economic front, the economic phases essentially that they've identified are the urgent phase, the stabilization phase, and the recovery phase. Right now, we are in the process of transitioning from urgent to stabilization. And that urgent phase lasted from March 16th, essentially when the plan was put into place, to right now. And stabilization will occur essentially there, we hope, between now and September. And at that point, we'll transition into this recovery phase. And overlaid on top of that, however, is the health guidance system that you're seeing the colors that you saw the governor refer to yesterday when he announced that we're going to transition from red, which is the high risk, to orange, which is the moderate risk. And the good news there is that there's a slight lightening up of restrictions. I think most notably for all of us that miss going to our favorite restaurants and whatnot, there will be the ability for counties to give the go-ahead to their local restaurants to open back up for in-house dining. So we don't have to rely on the takeout anymore. Hair salons, things like that, I think that were mentioned at the beginning of the call, can now operate. However, it's worth noting that there are still going to be very strict protocols in place to prevent the passing of this, even with people being able to dine in, go to the gym, so on and so forth. So it's definitely not a free-for-all, not a huge lightening up of the load, but it is a lightening of the protocols to try to get, as has been previously discussed here, to try to get the economy going a little bit, to try to get some reactivation in our local economies. there's a lot of information contained therein, and it's interesting on a personal level, just for, I think, everyone facing this on an individual basis, but it's also very important, I think, for business owners to read through that plan. It provides a lot of information around what are the metrics that the state is using to guide us through these different phases, through the economic phase and then through the health phase. It really gets into the data that they're paying attention to around hospital capacity, transmission rate, new cases, how they work all those together to come up with where we're at, essentially. So I really do encourage everyone to take a look through that. It's not a dense read by any means, that you can fly through it pretty quickly. And I think it provides a little bit of a sense of, for me at least, a little bit of a sense of calm reading through it and understanding that there's a structure here that we're working within, and that there's good data to back it up. So I would be happy to take any questions if anybody has any, but definitely take a look through that, because beyond what I can discuss here in a couple of minutes, there's great information. Anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel today.
Thank you. We'll hear from Susan Schilling and then Pat Jordan, and then we'll start with some of our questions. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan, obviously, because Tammy just introduced me. I work with the Southwest Valley Chamber, and what we've been doing during this really difficult time is just trying to provide information for our businesses. So we've had educational meetings. Some of these things that both Robert and Colby just talked about, I've been providing information to attend a lot of these online virtual meetings. For instance, the Utah Economic Task Force, they meet every Tuesday. You're welcome to watch it for free. It's on Facebook. It's Facebook Live, or you can go to the Salt Lake Chamber and you can watch them after the fact. They provide lots and lots of good information. There's also the David Eccles School is providing trainings twice a week, and they just finished their training on how to save your business. And on Friday, they're starting a new training. It's how to rebuild your business and reactivate our community. And that will go for the next few weeks. So those would be important things for you guys to watch and to get ideas and to hear from the leaders that are involved heavily. Just like we're listening today, we have people that really know what they're doing. Some of the other things that we as a chamber are doing, we're providing a lunch meeting, a virtual lunch meeting next week, and the title of it is Brilliant Living in a Chaotic World. And basically what we're talking about is how to navigate through this situation and be able to handle it. And it is going to change how all of us view each other, all of us view business, how we view our world, and how to not let it cause permanent damage to how we interact with each other and how we do business together. And so that will, and it's a free lunch. All of these things are free for you to watch and attend and to help you become to navigate this difficult time. We've offered a 4-day business seminar for those who now had time to do business. So that was kind of good for people to be able to attend. Part of our emails that we include all the information that's been included here we include information on the EIDL loans, on the PPP loans. The U.S. Chamber offered a $5,000 grant for businesses. They ran out of the money in a week, but we let people know that that was coming up. The Utah Leads Together has a small business bridge loan. You know, we provide all of this information for you guys to be able to adapt and innovate and overcome this trial that we're dealing with right now. And if anybody has any questions, or if you want the information, just let me know. I'll add you to my email list and I'd be happy to send it to you. You do not have to be a chamber member to get it. We just want the businesses to succeed, and we're here for you.
Thank you, Susan. Pat, you're up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat Jordan, and I've been representing Herriman for several years. I'm based in Washington. I do government affairs, which is a nice way of saying I'm a lobbyist. And so I have been following all of the coronavirus legislation going through Congress, and as Robert Spenlove said, there was $350 billion provided through the CARES Act for the Paycheck Protection Program. Unfortunately, too much of that money, about 45% of it, went to businesses like the LA Lakers, which is not exactly a small business. So while some of that money is coming back from publicly held companies and other companies that aren't small businesses, in the last round of funding that Congress just passed last week, there is $321 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. And this time they've set aside about $60 billion for small lending institutions. It's within that $60 billion that comes out of the $321 billion. $30 billion of the $60 billion is set aside for banks and credit unions that have between $10 billion and $50 billion in assets. And then another $30 billion in lending to small businesses has been set aside for banks and credit unions that have under $10 billion in assets. So hopefully that will help some of the really true small businesses get more of the money this time. But the program under the second round of funding, the $321 billion, started on Monday with the SBA, and the program crashed right away because it's so overwhelmed. And that money is supposed to be gone within a week. So Congress is supposed to, there's a lot of interest in passing additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. I'll go into just some brief points about the Paycheck Protection Program in a minute, but I think in the next round of funding that Congress provides for the PPP, as it's called, there's going to be more flexibility with respect to the 75% that has to be set aside currently for payroll, because a lot of small businesses have said that that's just too restrictive and they need to be able to use the money for other things as well. So I see that being a change in the next round of funding for PPP. So anyway, and this $321 billion that was just passed last week and that became available on Monday, that money is going to be gone in like a week. So I'm hearing. And if you already had an application in, the SBA will automatically consider that. But if you haven't gotten an application in already, you should, particularly since there's a set aside with smaller lenders, the $60 billion that I referred to. But then there's also another program called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and you can apply for both the PPP and this Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and you can get $10,000 in a couple of days. And so if it were me, I'd be applying for that like right away, just to get some kind of a short-term help. And it includes all businesses under 500. It includes nonprofits, sole proprietorships, independent contractors, and self-employed people. So there's also something, as Robert Spenlove mentioned, the Main Street Lending Program. That's really, as I understand it, meant more for medium-sized businesses, although small businesses can apply for it, and there is $600 billion available through that. The minimum request under the Main Street Lending Program is $1 million, and the maximum is $25 million. So, but as I said, I think Congress is going to be passing another round of funding for the PPP that will be more flexible for small businesses. So I'm hopeful that you can take advantage of that flexibility. So anyway, that's I'll leave it at that and open it up. Give it back to Tammy.
So Pat, since you had kind of touched on this already, I'm just going to pose this question and you can see if there's anything else that you could add. One of the questions that was just texted is, will the federal government continue to develop programs to help businesses who have been impacted by the pandemic? It seems that the money runs out quickly and is distributed more to big business and large corporations.
Yeah, well, that's what I know. That is a problem. Yeah, it's a big problem. So that's why I think in in this last round, there was the 60 billion set aside for the small lending institutions. So, you know, I think Congress is very sensitive to that now, and there will be another round of funding. As I said, how much it'll be, I don't know, because hopefully the next round will also include funding for state and local governments, which is needed badly, you know, as we know. So I do see more emphasis on that, you know, in the next round of funding. Yes.
Thank you. This next question, probably almost everybody could chime in. So if you all have something to add to it, that's great. It says, what does the economy look like in the southwest area of Salt Lake County? And do you see the economy getting better in Herriman after COVID-19?
Well, I can start off. This is Robert. I think one of the benefits that I would say that Utah has over the rest of the country is even more true in the southwest portion of Salt Lake County, which is we've got a young workforce. We've got really good population growth. We continue to see not only in-migration, but natural increase. And so we've got that a really good supply of workers that lends to a strong economic base. And then while everyone is going to suffer, it's going to, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is going to hurt everyone nationwide, statewide, and community-wide. I think that we are very well positioned that when the recovery starts, that we'll come out of it very quickly.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I would just say that here at EDC Utah, we've had a lot of conversations with people that are in the site selection industry, helping businesses identify new markets for relocation or for expansion. And there's a very strong sentiment in that industry that, unfortunately, I don't want to sound like we're piling on here, but these large markets that for a long time have been the hubs of finance, of tech, and so on and so forth, are going to look pretty risky going forward after we saw that, as you would expect, these become the hotbeds of a pandemic or something like that occurs, and that businesses after, as they're climbing out of this, are going to want to expand and diversify more into second-tier markets. And we believe that the larger Salt Lake City area, Utah, is super, super well poised to attract a lot of that investment. So again, you kind of hate to be happy about the circumstances here that are leading to it, but I think again, as the representative said, that there's a lot of fundamentals here that we think are very strong that are going to help Utah be able to pull out of this a little stronger, a little faster than states around us that we compete with.
Tammy, I'll just add, obviously I'm not an expert on the economic side of things, but I think there's a couple of things that we have going for us in the southwest corner, and in particular Herriman. The first being that obviously we've been part of the broader Utah economic scene, which has already been mentioned of, you know, probably the strongest in the nation. And we are probably poised much better than most to be able to lead a very quick and strong recovery as we get into these next phases. So I think we're very fortunate in that regard that we've really had great leadership over the past couple of years and foresight in the ability to attract strong business. And we're still part of a rapidly growing community as well. And that growth, even though I think we will see some slowdown, it's not going to certainly stop. And I think just the fact that we have that continued population growth, still a strong construction industry going in our state, in particular in the southwest corner of the valley, that will help to spur a lot. Again, we're still going to see a lot of movement there, a lot of growth, and I think we're still going to have the opportunity to see a lot of people who, again, are still in a position to be able to consider going out and just spend their money in the local community. And I think that that's where we as a city come in, to work together with our business community in Herriman to really work and find the best ways to promote those businesses and to encourage that spending to, again, to really jumpstart that rebound. And I think Herriman overall has done a very good job of leading through this crisis, putting out continual information, being very present and in contact with our business community, and helping to, again, pass on all of these resources that have already been discussed. And I think the next piece will be really how do we promote the businesses, and again, have these programs in place. For anyone that was on the council meeting last week, may have heard that we discussed a Herriman Bucks type program, to where really the city will sponsor and send out to all of our community a certain amount of Herriman Bucks for them to be able to go, and in conjunction with the same match out of their own pocket, to spend that within our communities. And I think these are the things that you will see that will really help jumpstart our economic businesses within our community, and help to really start to drive and see that rebound and that redevelopment moving forward. So I really hope that the business community within Herriman really recognizes the efforts that have been made on their behalf leading up to this, and our economic development team with Heather and Sandra, and all the communications that have been done there to help know that we are aware and we are cognizant, and we are doing everything we can as a community to help lead that charge into that recovery effort.
Rudy, I did see your question about the ReLife loan. Did you want to ask that to the panel?
Yes, my question was, I just forget who mentioned it, but oh, they just put a link on it. So yeah, I was asking where to apply for this disaster loan assistance, but it was, last time I checked, they say that it was like a pause or something like that, so we couldn't apply at the moment. But I don't know if it's open now, but seems like it is, because they just put somebody, oh, Mrs. Susan put the link in it. All right, thank you. Yeah, that was my question, where to apply.
Okay, thank you.
Tammy,
our next, yes.
I appreciate the question that was asked, because again, my wife owns a small business in the community. Can someone speak to the IDL loan process? Again, I think there has been some information out there that is not currently available. Can we just get confirmation of whether that is or is still not an option for some of our businesses?
My understanding is they just refunded it by $60 billion. And so there should be money in it again. It got funded again when the PPP got refunded. So you should be able to apply for it. One of the things that was originally told that everybody could get $10,000, and then they changed that to $1,000 per employee. So it has changed because there was such a demand for it. The chamber did apply for it, but we've never heard anything, and it's been over a month. So I can't guarantee that you're gonna hear a lot about it or get a great response, but I think Pat might be able to talk about that more than I can.
About what? What do you, or the EIDL program, Susan?
Yes, how long it is taking to get a response from the, who's over at the IRS or the SBA?
The SBA. Well,
Yeah.
Their system is crashing because the larger lenders they're allowed to submit up to 5,000 applications at one time.
Oh, wow.
So I think the JP Morgans or whoever are, they're sort of, plus there are just a lot of people applying. So you're saying that employers can only get 1,000? Is that?
1,000 per employee. They've limited to that for the $10,000 grant that the EIDL loan offers.
So the question is, why is it taking so long?
Yes.
Well, I think that it has to do with the system at SBA and the other complaints that it's been crashing. So that's hopefully they'll be getting that straightened out very soon.
So we all just need patience.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question, if we are getting a PPP, will whatever they change on the next round for the percentage for payroll also apply to those that already received it?
That's a good question. I can't answer that because the next round of funding hasn't been passed yet. I mean, I'm sure they're open to suggestions. That would be something that could be suggested, but I would think not, but anything is possible. But
okay.
I really can't answer that right now.
Let's see. The next question is in regards to tax relief. They're asking if there will be any tax relief for businesses.
Well, there was that Trump tax bill for small businesses. You're talking about. I haven't heard about that, so I can't speak to that. I mean, there was a lot of tax relief for businesses in the Trump tax law. So do you mean specific to the losses from small businesses that have been incurred as a result of the pandemic? I haven't heard about that. I have not. Yeah.
On the Eccles call yesterday, on the David Eccles call yesterday, they did talk about some relief, and they said when the Trump tax bill went through, some of the expenses that we normally could list on our taxes were no longer available. And one of these, the CARES Act, they rescinded some of those. So you need to talk to your accountant about that. But for instance, if you remodeled your store, only a small percentage was able to be deducted. Now you can go back and redo your tax filing for 2000, I think 17, 18, 19, and you can now qualify and have those as deductions now. So when I get a copy of that, I can send that to Tammy and she can send it out to you guys. And at the end of the call, that's when they talked about this type of information on the taxes. So if you want, I can send that out. I'll probably get it later today, get a copy of the call from yesterday.
That'd be great. The latest question is, who can qualify to receive financial assistance? Can home businesses apply for federal assistance, or do they simply need to get a loan, a small business loan from their bank?
Any business can apply that has under 500 employees.
Great.
Yeah, so they can apply. Yeah. And if you're a sole proprietor, I think you can use. Well, no, never mind. I forget that. I'm not sure. I'm not going to go on. But yes, if they have a business at home, they can apply for the PPP or the EIDL program.
Okay. I'm trying to. They're scrolling in, and so I'm trying to make sure that I don't miss any. Are there any lease or rent relief programs for business owners?
I have no idea. I don't know. I can look into that, but I don't know.
Okay. Susan, have you heard of anything? Has the chamber received any information regarding that?
The people, I think it's the owners of the property that can offer that. And I would just say be really careful that it's forgiven, that it's just not extended out 6 months, and in 6 months you now have basically a balloon rent payment. So just be careful what you choose to do. So I think it's called forbearance. So just look at it, be careful, make sure that when it does come due, if it's not forgiven, that you can pay it. But I think that's property owners that get to decide that. That's my understanding, but somebody else might know more than me.
This is probably a good question for our councilmen. I think you both touched on this a little bit, but the question is, what steps is Herriman taking to help businesses as they begin opening up with restrictions?
That's awesome. That's a great question, and it's something that we talked about in our last city council meeting. I think that's something, if you wanted to go back and hear that discussion, that might be good too. But one of the things we've been talking about doing is introducing this thing called Herriman Bucks, where every family will get essentially a $10 or a $20 Herriman Bucks that'll be good for a purchase of double that amount. So they'll be able to use that at certain Herriman businesses to, it's kind of like a stimulus to help create some purchasing here in the city. A couple other things we've been talking about is we've changed some ordinances in the city helping with the kind of signs that can be put out in front of buildings. And so we're going to be bringing that back up to extend, changing that ordinance so that that can continue on for people. A couple other things we're going to be doing is having the Herriman Yeti involved in this business of the week activity. Where we'll be selecting businesses. Sorry, I'm looking at some notes I have over here too. So there's going to be a social media drawing on the Herriman City Facebook page, the Shop Local page, sharing the details of some giveaway items that are going to be at spotlighted businesses. A post is going to be made about that business each day for a whole week until it's time for the next business spotlight. And that the businesses that are currently closed are going to be spotlighted as soon as the order is lifted for those businesses to be open. So we're going to be doing some things like that. If you have seen around town on some of the electronic billboards that we have, you should see some of the signs reflecting which businesses are already open to continue, to encourage people to go there. But we're also going to be adding businesses to that marquee as they open up in the city. Tammy, do you know of any other programs that we currently have that we can talk about yet?
Steve, I'll jump in there really quick. I think you've hit on a lot of good ones there, talking about obviously recognize the businesses that have remained open, the things that they're going to do to recognize those when they open back up with, basically what they're calling a welcome back party, and getting that signage out there. As a council last week, we also discussed, which I believe we did get a consensus on, so correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, but when you talk about, excuse me, what incentives and things, that we might be able to offer our business community, that's a challenging thing, obviously, as we talk about our city budgets and how we have to make sure that we have enough in there to continue the city functions, and how we're not really sure yet how much of an impact we're going to see on those local sales taxes that are collected. But one of the things that we did talk about last week, and again, Tammy, I'll look to you to make sure that I'm remembering correctly, is that we're going to do a 12-month waiver period for business license renewals. Now, this obviously, for some is a small amount, and a lot of that is employee based, but we really felt like it was something we could do as a council to signify our support to the local businesses, and something that certainly isn't going to significantly affect our city budget, and something that we could do. So again, I hope the business community recognizes that we are very cognizant of the challenges that exist for them, and that we are looking daily at ways that we can help promote and enhance and encourage our residents to continue to shop local and support our businesses and help to rebound from this. So again, I think those that are in the business community out there recognize.
And of course, if there are any additional businesses that would like to sign up to participate in our Yeti Business of the Week, we want to make sure that you're included. So you can just contact the city either by emailing us or giving us a call, and we'll make sure that you get on that list. And we will also send all of the businesses information on how the city shop around with the Herriman Bucks will work, and hope that that kind of gets some stimulation of the economy going. That one we are hoping to start as soon as all of the businesses are reopened. We are also doing our welcome back party. So as businesses open, the city will go and provide some signage and marketing in front of those businesses, as well as run them across a video. We'll have a video compilation of all the businesses that are open to let the community know that you are open, that you are up and running, so that they know that they can come and visit you. So it looks like we're about 5 minutes after 1. So unless anybody has any last minute comments that they want to make, or anything that they want to mention before we sign off, are there any comments? Any additional questions? All right, well, I want to thank everybody. Oh, yep, go ahead.
I'll just say thank you to obviously our panel members that joined us for this today. Especially our business community for taking the time to join in, and hopefully they got some valuable information out of the discussion today. And I think that these things, regardless of how long this event that we're dealing with persists, these types of things are very valuable to continue to do moving forward, because there's a lot of information sharing and a lot of knowledge that can be gained by meeting. And this is a great format, obviously, to do that without significantly impacting everybody. But I would just encourage us to continue to look at doing these types of events moving forward, to make sure that everyone does have that information and have a chance to ask their questions. And thanks everyone for your time. Pat, it's great to see you. Haven't seen you for a while. Thank you for all your work on our behalf.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Okay, so with that, I just want to thank. Oh, go ahead.
I just add on one word of support there with Clint there. Again, thanks to all the panel members. That we understand this takes a lot of time to get on these and take time to prepare, get familiar with all the information and programs that are out there. We appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing to get this information collected and disseminated out to the businesses here in the city. Just one additional message for any member of the business community here in the city that has any further questions or concerns, or would like further information on how to connect with these programs, please reach out to the city directly. We have resources, we have people there that are willing to help you. Just please just don't fret in silence. Reach out, get some help. Let us get engaged with you so we can start making a difference.
Yeah, and I have just one last comment. If you haven't already submitted application, I would do it today, because even if you don't get it this time, you could get it in the next round of funding. So just get it in.
Okay, so thank you to all of our panelists. We'd like to thank all of our businesses that participated through GoToMeeting on YouTube and on Facebook. Again, this was recorded, so if you do know businesses that were unable to attend, just let them know that it will be posted on our social media, our webpage, and our YouTube page, so that they can hear the conversation that took place and see if there are items that can help them.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.